In DC, for DC. DC Radio, 96.3 HD4 and DCRadio.gov.
Hi, this is Muriel Garr, host of Champagne and Credit Pathway to the Middle Class, coming to you, it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. For those of you that really know anything about me, you understand that this whole conversation regarding money is something that I take quite seriously. Not what I plan to do as far as that life's journey, but it's something that I happen to walk into. And so I'm sending this message right now because there's been a lot on my mind as it pertains to this whole justice, what I'll call justice revolution. There's a lot going on. And instead of me being happy, in many ways I'm grieved, and I'm going to share why. Social justice is not economic justice. Let me say that again. Social justice is not economic justice. And I think it's important, particularly for people of color, to be mindful that there's a huge difference. And so some of you are going to say, we know that. Why are you even bringing that up? Well, one of the reasons why I'm bringing it up is because we're getting so happy or excited around these various press releases that are coming out from these corporations about the charity that they're providing to social justice organizations, a grant to this organization, so much money to this cause. But here's the reality. How is that helping the economic well-being of people of color? And I'm going to get real, I'm going to drive it home because I like to use myself as an example. So recently I was going through some files at home. Like everyone else, I've been quarantined at home and I'm still purging files, I'm going to be honest. So I came across something that I'd sort of forgot. It was back in the recesses of my mind, tucked away, and I, for whatever reason, had decided not to remember it. So I'm going to actually read a portion of it. This is what the document says. When figuring Muriel's merit increase for 2003, the salary structure for X changed, resulting in her being below minimum pay. She is a 20-year employee with stellar performance, and we increased her salary to the minimum and then figured her 2% increase. Now, let's highlight this. She is a 20-year employee with stellar performance, yet her pay is below minimum pay. Economic justice. Why does economic justice matter? We can have all the credentials and we can do stellar performance. But if we make just enough money to still be broke, then we're still enslaved. If we make just enough money to still be broke, then our ability to live or invest is hampered. When we make just enough money to be broke, we don't have the resources to hire top attorneys in the event a child or a family member gets into a situation or a scenario, because we make just enough money to still be broke. And they're comfortable with actually doing that. We are comfortable with accepting it and receiving it because in some instances we are perhaps brainwashed that that's our value. In other instances, we are afraid to speak up because if we do speak up, you guys know, particularly if you're a person of color and if you're a woman and outspoken, we don't want to be labeled and tagged. But they also know that if they grant us economic justice, then our ability to control the destiny of our lives will change. Social justice is not economic justice. So when I got into this conversation about money many years ago, it was because I happened to be sitting at the table and I could see the difference in how individuals with money were being treated compared to individuals that didn't have money. And not just money, but wealth. And wealth is relative. I'm not saying that you got to have 7 figures in the bank, but what I am saying is wealth is the ability to make financial decisions and not have to worry about how those financial decisions are going to impact you in the long run. Wealth is your money making money while you're working. But it's very hard for your money to be making money while you're working if you've been a 20-year stellar performer and you're still being paid below the minimum of your job. I'm not unique in that scenario. So as we're having this question or conversation about social justice, there's this larger conversation around economic justice. Economic justice for people of color, particularly for women who are making far less per hour than their white female counterpart. And then we have our Black male. And I truly believe that men are hunter, gatherers, and providers. I also believe that men have been targeted since 1619 when our families were divided in order to keep the family structure from growing into a strong, cohesive unit. Because if we give Black men economic justice, then their ability to care for their families will change, and thus the generational wealth transfer will change because they will have the means to support their families, pay their bills, and also save to invest for the next generation. But that's not the conversation they want to have with us. They want to have a conversation around social justice, or they want to have a conversation, let's talk. Share with me how you feel. So let me share how I feel. Because I recently shared in a conversation. I raised 2 children, raised them as a single parent. For those who really know me, this story you've heard before. Both of my children had an opportunity to go to college, and both of them attended college. Both of them had choices as to where they could attend. Both of them received scholarships at a different level. Both of them graduated from college. My son, a Black male child, had an encounter with the police, driving while Black with some of his friends. I have a cousin who died in the hands of police via some kind of whatever, because you never know what the police report, whether or not that's true or not. I happen to live in a community that was previously gated. I pulled up in front of my home one day, taking a call on my cell phone because it's a wooded area. The cell phone service is horrible. So I stayed in my car to have this conversation with a community-based organization leader. While sitting in my car, obviously I was sitting there too long in front of my house where I pay the mortgage. Two police officers confronted me, asking me if I lived here. Oh, mind you, I forgot. I happened to be on the homeowner association board. Not only was I on the board, I was the treasurer. So you got to understand, I got some police officers coming up to me behind my car, asking me to prove that I live in my house in the community where I write the checks for the HOA, for all the HOA expenses, of which one was security. Let's go back. She's a 20-year employee with stellar performance, and she's paid below the minimum. Economic justice. Because the ability to care for oneself and one's family is tied to actually how much money they make. Then, of course, so does this tie into, you started this about why do you teach about money? Because there's this other thing, credit. Well, if you don't make enough to get access to the things that you need, least known the things that you want, then you move into this thing called credit. Because we want the same things that other people want. We want a safe, decent place to live. We want our children to go to nice schools. We want an emergency fund. We want to go on vacation at least. We want food in the refrigerator. We want to be able to pay the rent or pay the mortgage. We want to be able to drive a car that doesn't break down 2 miles from our home. And so part of that is going to mean that, particularly if you don't have a silver spoon in your mouth, you're going to end up using some form of credit. Credit is a business. The whole purpose of credit, in my opinion, is to make money for someone else. Now, properly used, it helps you to actually leverage your dollars to obtain things. And if you use it correctly, you can write the interest off on the expenses, particularly if it's a business, and your money could be making money while you use somebody else's money. Got that? A mortgage is a great example of that, because you gotta have a place to live. So if you're paying a mortgage, you got interest associated with that. You can still write that interest off on your taxes, and so you get a tax benefit for paying a mortgage. And so credit allows you to do that. But then you got that bad credit cards, student loan debt that dies with you. And once you start making a certain amount, you can't write the interest off on it. So they tease us with access as a result of credit, but yet they're really not paying us enough money to live within their prescribed debt to income ratios, or how much do you owe out that you're paying out on a monthly basis compared to what you're receiving in. And so we're always playing catch up. And then, of course, there are people like me that are going out and teaching, you need to have a budget, you need to manage your credit score, how important that is, and da 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 da. And you're telling people that no matter how little you make, oh no, we say how much you make, there's still a way to save, because remember how important your credit score is. Economic justice. 20-year employee, stellar performance, paid below the minimum. What's more important? Earning enough to be able to care for your family so that you can make more than the minimum payment on your credit cards if you happen to have them, or stellar performance and being paid below the minimum because you black and you get a job. Economic justice. So as we're engaged in this conversation, a few things that I need us to remember. First, when somebody can write off or give away $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, and they don't blink, it's just a number on the balance sheet that gets lost in rounding. So in short, that means that they have the capacity to give and not have a major financial impact. So Muriel, what are you saying? In short, there's a whole lot more money there. But also, if they have that capacity to give like that, what are they doing for their employees of color? Are they being paid at the same rate as their white employees? If not, why not? Look at your own financial condition. And while some of us are more savvy, much savvier than me, because trust me, that didn't happen to me once, it happened to me twice. Because I was just so grateful to have the opportunity to do what I did and to give back, that I didn't fight for the money that I earned and deserved to make life easier for me, which would mean it would be easier for my children. I learned how to live off of a little, real little. But that's not what I want for you. I want you to understand that economic justice is what we need to be fighting for. We deserve it. I want you to also understand that they have brainwashed us into just being consumers of things and spending money on things that we don't need in order to enrich the masses so we can still be enslaved. Which is why we're excited when they send a press release that they're giving so much to this organization and so much to that organization. Power to the people, power to the people. No, how much are they putting in our pocketbooks? Our personal pocketbooks. And that really needs to resonate, especially if we don't have $400 saved in the event of an emergency. Especially if during this COVID-19, we've been stressing about how the mortgage is going to get paid or the rent's going to get paid. Or if we did a fast one, oh well, we're going to get a forbearance on our mortgage, but we didn't know the right questions to ask. So now we owe 3 months worth of mortgage payments and we don't even have the money saved for the first one. Social justice without economic justice means we are still enslaved in chains. But I don't totally blame them. Just like I said, 20-year employees, stellar performance, earning below the minimum. I don't blame them for the chains. I blame me. Because I have the responsibility, and we have the responsibility to be our own advocate. We have the responsibility to understand a company's financial statement, just like we have an opportunity and a responsibility to understand our own. We have the responsibility to understand the hustle. Money is a business. Money makes money via interest and fees. If it's not making money for us, it's making money for somebody else. And so if we got credit cards and we're paying interest on them, we making money for somebody else. We got to go to work to earn the money to pay the bills. They just send us the bills, advise us when the payment is due, let us know when it's late, tack on an additional fee to make some more money, and we best pay them, because if we don't pay them, they jack up our credit score, which then impacts our ability to get another underpaying job, particularly if we're a person of color. So the hustle just keeps perpetuating itself because, to start with, we did not have economic justice. A 20-year employee, stellar performer, making below the minimum. That's not what I want for you. So while we're marching, we're carrying signs. Let's remember, Dr. King, since everybody wants to go back to Dr. King, let me go back to Dr. King. Civil rights, according to Muriel, is like, one of my other things outside of champagne and credit. I often quote Bible according to Muriel. Dr. King had this thing called the Poor People's Campaign. He understood economic justice. And so I encourage us to really, really think about economic justice, to be advocates for things that will actually change our lives, pay disparity. A lot of the challenges that our African American sons and daughters are facing as it pertains to the courts, yes, the pendulum of justice or the scales of justice, they're not balanced, especially if you're brown or black. Been there, done that, know all about it. But I also know that if we don't have the dollars to pay for the legal services, and we can't have, we're not, we can't tap into the Ben Crumps and others of the world, and we got to figure it out, that our loved ones end up facing a consequence much greater than others, only because we didn't have the means to secure the legal representation to get them out. Economic justice. As long as they keep underpaying us and donating money to XYZ social organization, acting like that's going to help create parity, we are still enslaved. So next time we see a press release you'll see 2 or 3 tomorrow. They've been popping about 2 or 3 a day. Go pull the company's financial statements. Look at what their revenue was for the last 3 years. Look at the compensation for their top CEO. And then compare that to the amount that they announced in their press release. Then the next thing I want you to do is start challenging this whole thing of, we're going to promote so many Black people, the whole diversity and inclusion. I'm nauseous about this diversity and inclusion thing. Start asking the question. Okay, got it. You got X percentage of your workforce, of your leadership team is going to be diverse. Okay, I'm down with that. So they have a title. I'm down with that. Implied, if you didn't figure this out, folks can have a title and still be paid below the minimum of their particular function and be a stellar performer. So when a company says X percentage of our leadership team will be African American, ask the question, what is the rate of compensation for your African American team leaders compared to the rate of compensation for your non-African American team leaders? And then let's ask, what's the rate of compensation for the males versus the females? Now, here's number 3. Because it's easy to give somebody a title to go along with a role. And because we have this, everybody wants to feel like they belong. Everybody wants to feel like they have value. And some may disagree, but that's my opinion, and I can have that. So having a title means, oh my goodness, I've accomplished something. And people look at you differently when you got, letters behind your name. The whole education process, BA, MD, PhD, it says to individuals that you've sacrificed and you've learned, you've matriculated at the highest level, So the same titles, all of that. But the next time, you see this press release, huge amount of dollars going out, you've checked, what the CEO makes, revenue for the company. You challenge them on what's the compensation for these African Americans that you have in leadership. Here's question number 3. What percentage of the corporate budget do they control? Because see, money is power. Because this is a conversation about green. Just so happens I'm wearing green. I didn't even think about that. Because you can have 50%. I haven't found a company that has that, but you can have 50% of your leadership that's diverse. But I'm willing to bet you that they control less of the budget as far as total dollars than their non-diverse counterparts. I'm willing to bet you that their white counterparts control more of the budget. They have more budget control, economic justice. So let us not be content with the crumbs from the table. It's like we're so excited and so happy now that we can buy a house where we want to. We can drive a car, whatever car we want to drive. We can eat at whatever restaurant that we want to eat at. We have arrived. 50-something years we have freedom, if you want to call it that. Yeah, we can buy a house now after redlining has been exposed, which started with the federal government, but that's another show. But are we paying the same amount for that house as our white colleague or counterpart? No. We can buy a car and we can go shop for a car wherever we want to. Is there a likelihood that we're going to be discriminated against when we go buy that car? Yes. We can get a loan and we can actually even have a good credit score. Is there an opportunity that we will not get the interest rate that our credit score deserves, that we've worked so hard to maintain? Yes. That's one of the reasons why regulators, when they're going in to regulate financial institutions and review them, they do what's called a matched pair test. They pull loan files and they compare two similar situations to see if the institution engaged in discriminatory practices in lending. And guess what? They find issues often. So guys, don't take the okie dokie. And as I close, stop paying these crazy interest rates on these credit cards. Get out of the debt. Leverage whatever you have to leverage to get out of the enslavement. Because in order for us to get to this next phase of freedom, we're going to need economic justice. That means we need to live where we can afford, not necessarily with them, because they don't want us there anyway. And we're living with them just because it's a status symbol. The greatest status symbol is green. So let's think green. And while we're thinking green, remember, social justice is not economic justice. So I'm signing off. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning or somewhere close to that, 1:37, 1:40, whatever. But I'm closing out. This is Muriel, and you're listening to my at-home version of Champagne and Credit, Pathway to the Middle Class. Is your money, is your freedom, economic justice, our right. Have a good night.
In DC, for DC, DC Radio, 96.3 HD4, and DCRadio.gov.